legacy of the ICTY in the former Yugoslavia, organized by the outreach program of the tribunal with the support of the governments of the Switzerland, the Netherlands, as well as the EU. My name is Nerma Jelacic, and I am the chief of the communication service as well as the outreach program. One of our roles today is going to be to take you through the program of this meeting. Many of you are aware of the fact that similar conferences took place over the last couple of years in The Hague. These conferences were organized under the sponsorship of the former President of the Court, Mr. Patrick Robinson. One of the key conclusions of those conferences was that the dialogue on the heritage of the tribunal should also take place in the countries which are now on the area of former Yugoslavia. We had the first of such conferences in Sarajevo 2 days ago. Zagreb is our second destination, and at the end of November we will be having the same discussion on the same topic in Belgrade, Serbia. Today, alongside judges from the ICTY and senior officials of the court, you'll be able to hear views on the heritage of the tribunal as well as the needs of national jurisdictions, as well as civil society organizations, the media, and non-governmental organizations. Please have in mind that today's conference is completely open to public. Apart from the representatives of the media, the tribunal will also make an audio copy and video copy, and it will be posted on our website. So everything that is going to be said today will be made public, so please have that in mind. Let me also give you a few practical pieces of advice before we start with the official opening of the conference. Please switch off your mobile phones, or at least put it to silent, so that you do not disrupt the conference. I would also like to invite you to actively participate in the discussions. Each panel is organized in such a way that half of the time is dedicated for you and for your views. That's why we wanted to have as many participants as possible, so that we could have an opportunity to have the broadest range of views and options on the heritage of the ICTY and legacy of the ICTY as possible. Now I'd like to give the floor to officially open this conference to the Honourable Judge, Mr. Kamil Agios, who is the Vice President of the ICTY. So the floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and welcome to this conference on the legacy of the ICTY in the former Yugoslavia. I would first of all like to acknowledge the presence at this conference of the Assistant Minister in the Ministry of Justice of the Republic of Croatia, Ambassador Gordon Markotic. Good morning. And of two ambassadors, Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Her Excellency Ms. Stella Roner-Grubacic, and His Excellency Mr. Dennis Knobel, Ambassador of the Swiss Confederation to the Republic of Croatia. Also the presence of the Vice President of the Supreme Court of Croatia, Judge Ana Karadzic, and that of Martin Mayer, the political advisor delegation of the European Union to the Republic of Croatia. Then, of course, I would like to mention Judge Ksenia Turkovic, who is the new Croatian judge on the European Court of Human Rights, and Ms. Jasmina Dolmagic, Deputy Chief State Prosecutor of the Republic of Croatia. Last but not least, Ms. Gabriel McIntyre, the Chef de Cabinet of the ICTY, and my dear colleague and former president of the ICTY, Judge Fausto Pokar. Your presence in this conference is of great importance, and I wish to thank you all for being here and give your contribution to the success of this meeting. It is a great privilege for me to address you today at the start of this conference on the legacy of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. I start with acknowledging the great efforts made by the Tribunal's outreach program, which made this unique event possible. This outreach program has been criticized many a time in the past, in my opinion, very unjustly. They have been doing sterling work, particularly here in the territory of the former Yugoslavia. So not only I congratulate you for your work, but I also thank you for organizing these conferences. My deep gratitude also goes to the European Union and the governments of Switzerland and the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Your long-term commitment to the work and mandate of the Tribunal can once again be seen in your generous support of these events. In this hall today, based on the information I have received, I can see an extraordinary gathering of people from all walks of life and from all over the Republic of Croatia, and also, I'm told, beyond. You may disagree amongst yourselves on several matters. You may also have diverse opinion on the ICTY and its legacy. But there is one thing that unites you all, and also unites us, the ICTY, with you, and that is the commitment to justice and our wholehearted hope that the Tribunal's work and legacy will continue to spur Croatia on its path to deal with the legacy of the war. The war that affected and continues to affect every single citizen of this great country. It is a particular honor for me to open this discussion here in Zagreb, and I thank the President of the Tribunal, Ted Meron, for giving me the opportunity to be here. This country, tragically, was the first one to see the shape of things to come in other parts of the former Yugoslavia. Few expected in 1991 that the shocking pictures we saw from in and around Vukovar and the entire former Yugoslavia, wanton destruction of cities and villages, plunder, murder, unlawful detention, unspeakable suffering of civilians fleeing from their burning homes. Zagreb itself was not spared either. The tribunal indicted and put on trial almost 20 individuals for crimes committed throughout Croatia, notwithstanding their high position in political or military hierarchy and regardless of their ethnic origin. I look at Zagreb today, its graceful beauty, and you can admire it even from here on the 17th floor of this hotel. Its dynamism and the affability of its residents, and I am struck by how much war seems to be the thing of the past. You've come a long way, but is the war really a thing of the past? Despite remarkable achievements in Croatia's post-conflict recovery, the wounds of war, in my opinion, are still not healed, are still open, at least many of them. This conference focuses on the present, but also on the future of this country and its people. Just as a house cannot be constructed on shaky foundations, similarly, the future cannot be built without a proper and honest account of the past. As the tribunal approaches its 20th birthday, and as at the same time it prepares to retire from the stage, we are faced with the question, what are we leaving behind? And truly, we are leaving behind a world that has undergone a tectonic shift, a world in which people have a completely different view of the necessity and practicability of ensuring accountability for war crimes. 20 years ago, hardly anyone believed that the ICTY would be able to hold a proper investigation, let alone conduct a trial. I remember I was not a judge at the ICTY then, but I remember that the general opinion when the ICTY was set up way back in 1993 was that it would practically wind up within a year or two, maybe at all, if it could prosecute one single individual. But I can assure you that no one envisaged that 20 years after we would still be here with 3 ongoing trials, several appeals still pending, and in a situation where the ICTY can boast that it has brought to justice all the 161 persons it indicted. I can assure you this was not a dream, this was not envisaged, no one foresaw it, but it happened. The countries in the former Yugoslavia at the time were torn apart by war. Their judiciaries were not able to cope with the volume of crimes committed almost daily. And many local leaders turned their back on the tribunal's work. Not only local leaders, but other countries as well. Today, the tribunal is a leader in the global fight for justice, having indicted and accounted for each one of its 161 accused. Arguably, these people would have never been brought to account were it not for the ICTY. All were given a fair trial conducted to the highest standards of criminal procedure and due process laws. The tribunal has been the source of some of the most groundbreaking jurisprudence and ensured that in the future, perpetrators will be tried on the basis of a sophisticated body of substantive criminal law and procedural law. Nuremberg and Tokyo did leave a very strong legacy when it comes to substantive international criminal law and international humanitarian law. But the recent development in these laws has been certainly enhanced by the ICTY, and the ICTY has filled in a lacuna that was particularly and conspicuously noticeable after the Nuremberg and Tokyo trials, namely the lack of an adequate and proper specific procedural law for the trials for international crimes. We have, over the years, created our own body of procedural law, which has in turn served as the basis for the rules of evidence and procedure of other tribunals, and also served as the basis for the enactment of the rules of evidence and procedure of the International Criminal Court although there are variances, some of which are also quite important. This is also part of our legacy. However, Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, for justice to be meaningful, it has to have an impact outside of the courtroom, outside of The Hague. This is why we are also asking ourselves, how can we ensure that the people in Croatia, and for that matter in the entire region of the former Yugoslavia, have access to, understand, and foster the legacy of this institution? There is no other group more interested in the ICTY's legacy or more suitable to take ownership of it. And I hope we will all agree that your country and your people need it too. I can assure you that the tribunal hears and understands this need. That's why we are here this morning. The two legacy conferences held in The Hague that were referred to by Nerma way back in 2010 and 2011 laid the groundwork for the ICTY's thinking surrounding its heritage and allowed it to take stock of the needs of various stakeholders. Today's conference marks the success of what we have started. And now the dialogue continues in the region. We commenced 2 days ago in Sarajevo. And after this meeting here today, we will continue later on with another meeting in Belgrade. During all these meetings in the region, the main stage belongs to the local experts, victims' associations, judges and prosecutors, human rights activists, leaders of academia and politics, as well as the media. The tribunal's representatives are here to listen and to learn what are the tools and information you need, as well as what we can do together to further ensure that the ICTY's legacy lives on and acts as a catalyst for change. The legacy of the ICTY, the facts it established, its archives, and its contribution to the rule of law in the region will certainly prove to be a decisive facilitator to the process of facing the past and securing reconciliation, not only amongst yourselves, but also with the other countries in the region. The tribunal's legacy will be fulfilled when it inspires this generation to continue transforming Croatia through the rule of law, accountability, and equal justice, and when this generation succeeds in passing this lesson to their children and grandchildren, we can then say that the efforts that we have all made have been successful. If we all succeed, it will not only be the tribunal's legacy. We are contributing, but the main role is yours. After what happened in this country in the 90s, you owe this to yourselves, to your children, and to your noble country, especially as it prepares to join the family of nations known as the European Union. I wish you all a very successful conference, and I thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Hvala sudjađe. Sada molim sutkinju Anu Garačić, potpredsjednicu Vrhovnog suda Hrvatske.
ovoj konferenciji na koje ćemo razmijeniti mišljenja
because we will exchange views today, not only about the importance of the tribunal, which soon will complete its mandate, but also we are going to talk about the legacy that this tribunal leaves to all of us. We believe that it's extremely important that the outreach program of the ICTY has organized these 3 conferences. As we know, on the 6th of November, one conference already took place in Sarajevo. We have it here today in Zagreb, and on the 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, the conference will take place in Belgrade as well. So everything that the colleague before me has said is extremely important. Using the legacy of the ICTY in criminal proceedings in Croatia is something that we've discussed a lot so far. I would just like to briefly remind you that the Republic of Croatia at the end of last year, and let me just say that I will talk about the legal issues more, and I'm glad to see a lot of prosecutors and judges here who will be applying that in the future. So at the legislative level, at the end of last year, we adopted amendments to the law on the application of the statute of the ICTY. And with this law, we've regulated a very important area. This is the area of the use of evidence which were collected by the ICTY. So this is a topic that we hold in high esteem. We've started thinking where to place this evidence, where to put them. We will probably get copies, as I've talked to colleagues, from these evidence, but at the legislative level, we are already prepared. We are prepared that during criminal proceedings, we can use evidence collected by the ICTY, and we will accept them as admissible evidence, although we will be applying the procedural law of the Republic of Croatia and the substantive law of the Republic of Croatia. So this is something very important, and I think it's something that we should say more about during the first panel. I will just use this introductory part to welcome you once again, to say that I'm very glad to have you in Zagreb, and thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. You're right, this is going to be one of the topics for certain. And now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Stella Runer-Grubacic, Her Excellency, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to the Republic of Croatia, to take the floor.
Judge Karadzic, Assistant Minister Markotic, colleagues and distinguished guests. Dobar dan svima. What a true pleasure it is to be in front of you, speakers and panelists, academics, judges, both international and national, prosecutors, authorities, human rights activists, and representatives of victims' associations. Seeing you, all of you here seems to be a clear proof of the wide variety of people the ICTY has touched and will continue to influence in the future. Today's conference is all about shaping that future, shaping the future of international justice by preserving the legacy of ICTY and by collecting building blocks to make sure international criminal law will get stronger, more efficient and swifter. Clearly, we've come a long way, and the Netherlands has been there from the beginning, hosting the ICTY in The Hague. After the Nuremberg and Tokyo trials, the ICTY was the first major international criminal tribunal. Apart from being a milestone in the development of international criminal law, ICTY has also played an important role in The Hague becoming the international legal capital of the world, which I'm proud to say. In the last 2 decades, the world has changed from a place where it was virtually impossible to bring perpetrators of heinous crimes to justice, into a place where such criminals are running an ever-growing risk of being faced with criminal proceedings. The ICTY's success has been crucial in this development. The efficiency and efficacy of the ICTY has also paved the way for the International Criminal Court. The ICTY's impact has exceeded the expectations of many. Today, all of the ICTY's 161 indictees have been brought before the tribunal. That accomplishment sent out a very clear and powerful warning to the entire world that perpetrators of these crimes will not escape justice. But the ICTY's successes also relate to the criminalization of international humanitarian law and qualification of rape as a war crime, to name but a few examples. It has reformed international humanitarian law from a largely academic matter to international practice and realpolitik. The existence of international criminal tribunals has changed the international political stage. Or, to quote ICTY President Theodore Meron, ICTY brought international humanitarian law from classroom to courtroom. However, peace is not achieved by legal proceedings, as was stated before, and it is also more than simply the absence of conflict. Lasting peace requires reconciliation. Only time will tell to what extent the ICTY has been successful in achieving this, its second objective, bringing about reconciliation. In this regard, the Tribunal's outreach program continues to play a pivotal part. The conference today falls under that heading. It is a follow-up, as was stated, to a conference in The Hague in February 2010 and similar conferences being held this year in Sarajevo and Belgrade. The Netherlands is pleased to co-finance these conferences together with Switzerland and the EU. Ladies and gentlemen, let me turn briefly to the future and the role of national states. Now that ICTY is gradually transferring its competences to the residual mechanism, the burden of responsibility for the prosecution of international crimes and war crimes will, more than before, fall upon national authorities. In Croatia, the role of the State Prosecutor's Office and the judiciary is crucial in this respect. We've seen positive steps, such as shifting war crime cases to 4 courts with exclusive competence. Furthermore, a number of priority cases identified at national and regional level have been addressed, with further arrests, indictments, and court verdicts. However, as was also mentioned in the EU monitoring report of last month, there are still many cases of in absentia verdicts to be revised. Furthermore, attention is needed for witness protection and enabling the attendance of witnesses in war crime trials. Further efforts have to be made to tackle impunity, especially as the majority of cases have yet to reach the final verdict or are still to be investigated. A continued dedication to the prosecution of war crimes also requires regional cooperation, mutual provision of legal aid, as well as cooperation on the exchange of evidence and on extradition with the neighboring countries. This has proven to be a challenge in the past. I invite political leaders in Croatia and the neighboring countries to take their responsibility and to overcome these challenges in the near future. In this respect, I applaud the technical meetings that Croatia and Serbia organized recently as first steps toward an agreement on legal aid and exchange of evidence. Ladies and gentlemen, in my opening I said that the Netherlands has been there from the beginning. We will also be there at the end, hosting the residual mechanism, which we are honored to do. The largest burden to do justice to the legacy of the ICTY, however, rests on the authorities of this and other countries in the area. You are in a unique position to enable justice being done to so many to whom the war caused grave injustice. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. I hvala na vašoj podršci za
Your Excellency, and thank you for your support to the outreach program as well as to this conference. The next speaker is going to be His Excellency Mr. Denis Knobel, the Ambassador of the Swiss Confederation to the Republic of Croatia.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will be very brief, since this is an experts meeting and your time to exchange among you is quite limited. Just these words to tell you how pleased and proud Switzerland is to participate in this important conference and to cooperate with the ICTY in its legacy in the region of former Yugoslavia. My ministry, in fact, is not just giving financial contributions, but is engaged in concrete projects such as our last workshop here in Zagreb on the 21st of June 2011. This seminar, regional seminar on the legacy of ICTY and information centers in the capitals, was co-organized with our partner Swiss Peace. Today, I'm pleased to welcome again contributions from experts coming from Switzerland. My ministry also participated in both conferences in The Hague, 2010 and 11. Furthermore, we support other outreach projects, such as the Sense News Agency and the Bern Justice Report on war crime trials. And Switzerland, too, will stay committed in the future. Why we do this? Of course, we have the tribunals in The Hague, but we have some conventions which were signed in Geneva. But mostly because we know that there can be no peace without justice. This is one of the fundamental principles of post-conflict peace building. The ICTY was established in order to restore peace, justice, and to promote reconciliation in the region. The ad hoc criminal tribunal was set up in recognition of the primacy of justice. It wants to ensure the accountability of perpetrators and to provide redress to victims. Today, almost 20 years later, we are in a better position to assess the achievements of the ICTY. Indeed, these are important, not only here in Croatia, in Serbia, or in Bosnia-Herzegovina, but also in terms of the global development of the international humanitarian law. These results have been only possible because local governments, including Croatia, have been committed to the transitional justice in former Yugoslavia. Yet, we must admit that still great challenges lie ahead when we consider the legacy of the tribunal within the larger framework of peace and reconciliation in the region. Usually, this process of dealing with the past may begin with the Ministry of Justice. Sooner or later, it will end at the Ministry of Education or at the Ministry of Culture. Since its establishment of ICTY in 1993, an entire generation has grown up whose understanding of their own history has been shaped by the trial proceedings and verdicts reached in The Hague and in the countries. It remains for these generations to build up this legacy and to broaden it with its own experiences in the search of truth and justice. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot redo history, and as everybody knows, there is no second chance in politics or in war situations. But what we can do, and what we have to do, is to write history in a more scientific way. We have to guarantee that lawyers and historians have access to the basis and facts they need in the future. ICTY has to open its archives and documentations in an effective and sustainable way in order to allow future generations to deal with the past and to help us not to forget and never allow war in this region again. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for your long-lasting support to the outreach program. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Mayer from the EU delegation to the Republic of Croatia.
Excellencies, dear friends and colleagues from ICTY, Croatian institutions, judiciary and civil society organizations, media, diplomacy. I'm very glad that the EU has already again been invited to give a few welcoming words, not only because we are co-organizers of and co-sponsors of this event, but also because we feel that the role of the EU in dealing with war crimes has been acknowledged. However, war crimes is unfortunately only one of the several issues, legacy of the war, we are dealing with. Just think of refugees, missing persons, pensions, treatment of minorities, and so on and so forth. Last 10th of October, the European Commission, in its annual strategy paper on enlargement, put particular stress on reconciliation, and we heard already this importance. War crimes have been looked at through the reconciliation lens. We said in the report, quotation, completing the process of rendering justice for crimes committed during the wars in the former Yugoslavia is essential for lasting reconciliation. We praised our and the country's continuous cooperation with the ICTY, and at the same time we openly wrote that, again quotation, with the work of the ICTY winding down, the governments concerned still face major challenges tackling impunity for war crimes within their own jurisdictions. With political will, increased focus on resources, further regional cooperation, and resolution of problems with the extradition of own nationals, the countries of the region can ensure justice is done for the thousands of victims of war. There's not to add too much to these words, which highlights the biggest needs in terms of tackling impunity. More cooperation, more resources, more focus on solving problems of extradition of its own nationals. In a nutshell, continuous political will is indispensable. Here in Croatia, we had the first case of a country which had to deal with war crimes during and within the accession negotiations. And even now, through the European Commission monitoring of its commitments, Croatia undertook during accession negotiation. It was also for the EU the first time. This is not the right place to talk about the problems we met and the way we succeeded to overcome them, together with the Croatian institutions. Progress is evident. However, since it was the first time, we are now reflecting on ways to further improve accession negotiations and to obtain even better results, having in mind first and foremost the interests of the war crime victims, of reconciliation in the region, and of consolidating in each country the rule of law as a first preliminary step for all countries of the region to get closer and closer to the EU. And my final thoughts go to the civil society organizations. Their role is fundamental as concerns monitoring war crime trials, assisting victims, proposing ways to improve the system. They have been of huge help to the European Commission and to our delegation in the accession negotiations and the subsequent monitoring phase. A big thank to them. Here in Croatia, in the near future, there is going to be no EU delegation, no ICTY. OSCE has already left. Therefore, NGOs deserve full support in their endeavor to help the Croatian society and institutions to address the war crime issues. I wish you all the best for today's and tomorrow's work. Thank you very much.
Sve najbolje u vašem radu danas.
Hvala gospodine Mayer. Evo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayer. I think we have set the tone for this conference and for the opening of the working session for our discussion.